you are on your own, we are with you. Good evening and welcome. This is Face the Nation. Our topic of discussion today is COVID-19, commonly known as the coronavirus. To discuss more about this pandemic, we've invited four guests to our studios this evening as well. Let me quickly introduce them to you. Joining us tonight on the show is Dr. Saradhika Nangara, Vice President of the GMOA. All joining us tonight on the show is Dr. Raisa Pendese, WHO representative in Sri Lanka. All joining us tonight on the show is DIG Priyantha Jayakuri, as well as Dr. Jaduwan Bandara, Director of the Sri Lanka Medical Research Institute. Let's start off tonight's show with Dr. Raisa Pendese, WHO representative in Sri Lanka. Dr. Pendese, right now as we speak, there are 90 cases of those who have been infected with coronavirus, and the situation in the world is dire. Give us an overview as to where we stand at present. Your time starts now.
Good evening, everybody. As of yesterday, the numbers that were reported to WHO, we have almost now 300,000 cases globally and 13,000 deaths due to COVID-19. The cases are in almost every country in the world. There are only very few countries that have not yet reported. Every day we see 4 or 5 new countries reporting new cases. And this disease, when it was first reported to the WHO on 31st of December, that there were these unusual cases of pneumonia in Wuhan in China. Since then, 7 weeks have passed and we have a pandemic. First, WHO declared it as a public health emergency of international concern and later on declared it as a pandemic. This disease, as most of the people know by now as a coronavirus disease, or COVID-19 as we call it, is caused by coronaviruses which exist in natural habitat. We have diseases related to coronavirus. SARS and MERS-CoV are other diseases that people know, and they spread to multiple countries. But the virus that causes this disease, COVID-19, is a new virus. Initially, it was called the novel coronavirus, and later on the disease was named as COVID-19. It's coronavirus disease, COVID, and 19 because it was 2019 when this disease was identified. It's a respiratory disease, and it is spread by droplet infection. That means when a person speaks or has cough or sneeze, these droplets, they come out in the air and then they suspend on articles or surfaces around you. And when you touch these surfaces, through this, it enters your respiratory system. It's a respiratory system disease. And then it leads to respiratory symptoms. Most common is fever and dry cough, and you may have a sore throat. So this mimics other common respiratory diseases. That's why it's not like there are no unique features of this disease. And that's why it's very important that you take all the precautions. And initially when it came up, because it came from Wuhan in China, and then the case definitions of this new disease have also been changing. But now because this disease is there in most countries, so if you have a travel history to a country where there is active transmission of this disease, or you are in contact with a person who has been diagnosed with this disease, then you fit the case definition. Most important is that if you have fever and cough, you should stay at home and not go out, and wear a mask so that you do not spread the disease. And if you have difficulty in breathing, that means it is more severe, you should reach out to your doctor, give the history of travel or contact with a COVID case so that appropriate measures can be taken. Over the course of this disease, we have seen multiple measures that have been taken by countries. China started with locking down first Hubei province and later on other provinces. This is to avoid people getting together because, as I said, it's spread by droplet infection. It's a droplet infection. So when people are crowded, you have more chance of spreading the disease. The other thing that is important to note about this disease is that we do not have a treatment and we do not have a vaccine. So all we have is preventive measures. And while you say that it's kind of, it's doom and gloom, so many people infected, so many deaths are happening, we have also good examples. China has contained and reversed the epidemic. We have other examples coming out of Republic of Korea, Singapore, Japan, and other countries where this disease has been contained. So there are measures, public health measures available, personal protection, using hand hygiene, covering your cough and sneeze, staying home when you're sick, and social distancing, which WHO now calls physical distancing. Right. So that these measures, it is all of society and all of government approach. People, we are all in it together. We need cooperation across all strata of society. Together, we can beat this disease, but that solidarity is very important.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vaisa Pendese, WHO representative in Sri Lanka. We now move our attention to Dr. Sarada Kannangara, Vice President of the Government and Medical Officers Association. Dr. Kannangara, the GMOA was quick to press the government or even the president to enforce a lockdown in the country. And as a result of that, today Sri Lanka has seen a gradual decrease in the number of patients who are detected. We saw a couple of days ago the number of cases detected stood at around 13, and now the number stands at a low stage where we have approximately around 6 to 7 cases a day. So the GMOA gets somewhat credit. But tell us, Dr. Kannangara, how can we stop this spread, and when can we know that Sri Lanka is safe? Your time starts now.
Yeah, so, at the moment, I think, first of all, I think it is too early to say that we are in control, first, because even though that we have seen the gradual number of cases decrease in the last couple of days, but it's too early to comment, because that those who are exposed, the symptoms are yet to occur. So this might, in next couple of days, next couple of weeks, are very crucial. So that we are expecting to keep, we hope that the numbers remain low, and our capacity of our health system will not exceed it. So the disease itself is not very severe. Only the contagious, the spread, that is the issue with this disease. So that's why we have somewhat that the government at the moment, that one thing we are happy about, there's a government, a health minister which listen to GMOA. So that is one advantage we have at this moment. So that initially there was, because of comparatively to the other countries which has taken these steps to prevent this epidemic, we have taken the steps quite early, because our first case is reported 11th of March. And so we were able to lock down the airport by 16th of March. That spread. So, and then the curfew has imposed on 21st. So these measures been gradually coming on. So the thing is that even though the WHO also has recommended, the overreaction would have been better, the delayed reaction. On that principle we are staying. Because sometimes the people, suppose the other countries, may be telling this would have been overreacting. Suppose you have only 100, the cases is still under 100. Why these strict measures? But what we believe in principle is this overreaction would have been better, and it prevents and it helps to keep under control.
Yeah. Dr. Kannangara, I just want to ask you a quick question. Sorry to interrupt you, but we saw one case, the second case, the first Sri Lankan who was diagnosed with COVID-19 was released from hospital today after 12 days. However, people have this notion that it takes approximately 14 days for the disease to spread. So what do you have to say about this? 12 days against 14 days.
Yeah, this has to be very clear about this. Because even though the 14 days, it is the usual incubation period of the virus, and that is where the usual condition where we consider that spread of the virus has stopped. But before, once the virus has been cleared and the patient is symptom-free, the IDH hospital, the consultants, keep him additional day and make sure that 2 tests for viral tests are negative before he get discharged. So which means once he goes to the community, he's no longer infectious. So he's a normal person. That we have to ensure. So
thank you very much, Dr. Sarada Khanangara, Vice President of the GMOA. The journalist Faraz and Shehan will have more questions to the four panelists later on in the show. Let me now move my attention to Dr. Jayarwan Bandara, Director of the Sri Lanka Medical Research Institute. Dr. Bandara, my question to you is going to be very simple. As a layman, let's say I develop a fever during this quarantine period or the curfew period. What must I do as a responsible citizen? Am I supposed to come to the Sri Lanka Medical Research Institute? Am I supposed to go to a private hospital if I develop a fever? What must I do?
Anyone of the Sri Lanka, if they are suspecting that they have got corona, or if they are suffering from this sore throat, nose block, sneezing, runny nose, or headache, maybe little fever, they can consult their own physician. That is the most important thing. In Sri Lanka, all the physicians are well educated and very trained to, talk to people and find out just judge what could it be. So if the person who meet the physician, if the physician decide according to their symptoms, signs, and most probably the contact history, maybe recent visit and recent gatherings, they will decide whether to look for corona, or that could be something simple viral infection, which is common these days. If they suspect that person is having corona, definitely they will send to, but there are particular nominated 24 hospitals. If they can't directly send to those hospitals, they will send to the nearest hospital, from where they will be transferred to the one of the 24 hospitals. From there only, in government's management system, they will send samples to MRI mainly. But government has developed another 6 centers for this the testing with testing facilities. If they go to private hospital, if the private hospital, maybe the outpatient department, or maybe the clinician whom the suspected person is visiting, if they suspect that they have got that corona, they will definitely admit that person. Without admitting, it is not recommended to test for corona, because
Dr. Bandara, admit them where? Is it at IDH or government hospitals, or at
any
private
of the
hospitals?
government hospital,
But not private hospitals.
Even they can admit to the private hospital. Then currently government has given approval to private hospitals which are registered in the government hospital registry, are allowed to admit patients who are suspecting with corona. And even government has allowed private sector hospitals to perform tests under the supervision of virologists, consultant virologists. If they can't do that, the government has allowed private hospital to send those testing samples to MRI. So there will be nominal fee around 6,000 will be charged from private hospitals by MRI. And even for private hospitals, it is allowed to charge 6,000 rupees for one test. That is called PCR test.
Dr. Bandara, now in countries like Australia, in countries like the US, the test period stands approximately around 15 to 16 hours at least to give out the results. How long does the Medical Research Institute take to give out the results?
So when it was started about 6 to 8 hours, we took to our clinicians, the consultant virologists are the main people who are doing this with the assistance of medical laboratory technologists. The current time period is maximum 6 hours per test. Currently MRI is running 3 sessions per day. Even MRI is ready to run 24 hours per day for the testing. Today, I must appreciate my consultant virologists and the design laboratory technologies. They started the 4th run as well, because today we got about more than 80 samples. Yesterday, it was 101 samples tested at MRI. But all came from either private hospital or from government hospitals. No one sample will be accepted by MRI if he personally comes to MRI, because we don't have facility to take the sample from the patient. It has to be very cautious procedure. because if I'm suspecting that I'm having corona, so if somebody comes in front of me and takes sample, that definitely, if I get corona, that person will be definitely infected.
So what you're saying right now is, Dr. Bandara, just to clarify, an individual who thinks that he fits the definition of the coronavirus
Yes.
can go to a private hospital and then do the test, and
Yes.
the private hospital, which is registered with the government, can send the test to the Sri
MRI.
Lanka Medical Research Institute,
Or
and
else
within 6 hours,
yes.
you will release the...
Well, the test performing time is 6 hours.
Right.
But there are other procedures, documentation, reporting, and informing to this one epidemiology unit.
Right.
There are several other things has to happen.
And
but
private hospitals have the complete right to look after such patients.
Exactly.
In-house.
Provided they should do it under the supervision of consultant virologists.
Right.
That
Thank you
is
very
the rules and regulation of government.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jairwan Bandara, Director of the Sri Lanka Medical Research Institute. We now move our attention to Deputy Inspector General of Police, Priyantha Jayakudi. Thank you very much, DIG Jayakudi, for joining us this evening on the show. Starting off, DIG Jayakudi, tell us, yesterday, the Minister of Health and Indigenous Medicine declared the coronavirus as a quarantinable disease in the country. Under such law, how must the public or the citizenry should act in a situation like that? Enlighten us.
Good evening to everybody. The quarantine, the ordinance is a very outstanding law. It introduced in 1898 during the colonial period. Under this law, the Ministry of Health can issue certain regulations. Under this regulation, the Ministry of Health and the Indigenous Medicine had issued this and declare corona as a coronable disease. And if someone refuses to associate with this health staff or the medical personnel, and he is liable for 6 months rigorous imprisonment, he can be charged in court. And if someone is purposely spreading this disease with knowing as he is a patient and it is very high risk, and he is liable for 2 years rigorous imprisonment under this act. And police has taken very specific measures. Our main problem and our main issue to trace the associate, because after they tracking the particular person whom got infected, and we'll have to get his history, the last 14 days so period where he has gone and whom with the associate, and police is doing his main job to trace these people. That is the most important thing, to restrict this disease to particular area. And after that, we put them under the quarantine, self-quarantine at their residence, and we issued the certificate and we paste a sticker on the particular house. And these places are continuously supervised by the police officers and the intelligence officers, because they were instructed to restrict to that place, because they are not patients, but they can be the carriers. Then they can be carriers, and the most important thing, most dangerous part of this disease is it is not visible until it comes out. It can be kept in your body and it can be spread, and it can be give to others. Then on this basis, if we, after we finding this, the people whom have associated with the particular corona patients, and they were much restricted to their residence. And that is the main important job the police have to do. And another thing, as Dr. Kandangara very particularly say, we are sometimes overreact. Overreacting is very much important than the late and getting the worst situation. That is why we are imposing the law and the curfew, and people have to associate with the, because last so many instances we have faced, and during even my career we have faced so many curfew situations. But this is not that. All those curfew situations are depend on the security measures. But this time we have to face for the global situation and pandemic situation. On these issues, there is nothing to bargain, either life or death. on these issues, people have to associate with the security forces, especially the police and the tri-forces, and to restrict this situation, to control this situation, and to bring down under control the epidemic situation.
When will the curfew be lifted, DIG Jayakuri? Do you have any idea?
That is decided by the medical authorities, because police and the security forces, they are manipulating the laws. But the decision-making bodies, their expertise in virology, there are expert medical opinion people, they give the opinion. Now, as example, you know that Gampaha, Puttlam and Colombo, those 3 districts and the 5 districts in the northern province considered as a very vulnerable places where we have found a lot of patients. And these places we have put very long curfew period, and it will be over on tomorrow. But when the curfew lifted, other areas were covered with the curfew. Then they won't be able to lift from this district to other district. Like that, we are overlapping the timing period, because everything depends on the situation handled by the medical expertise. They are doing a very good job, and they are continuously doing. And this is a very group work, because medical expertise are doing their part, and they are taking decisions, and police and the security forces are imposing the laws. And we are urging people to associate with us, because there's nothing to bargain. This is not a security situation. This is totally a matter with life or death.
Thank you very much, DIG Priyantha Jayakuri. Before I open the floor for questions from Faraz and also Shehan, I would like to thank the 3 gentlemen and the lady for joining us tonight, including the staff at Stein Studios, for putting up this show at a time that the country needs information, and the country is at a dire need of information. I would like to thank the 3 gentlemen and the lady, along with my 2 journalists and the staff at Stein Studios. I open the floor for questions from our journalists. Onto my immediate left is Faraz Shaukat Ali, and onto my far left is Shehan Ranatunga. So we'll start off with Faraz.
Thank you, Shamir. I think this question is to Dr. Kanangara, please. Well, one of the panel mentioned, or I think you mentioned about overreaction. If we look at the statistics that's available now, and if you look at what happened in China, you'd see that in China, about 5% of their confirmed COVID-19 patients ended up in ICU. Now, China built their own special hospitals for this and so on in record times. So is Sri Lanka overreacting, or is it another way of saying that we don't have enough ICU beds right now?
Yeah, so in terms of now, when we were telling that of course that our ICU beds and our staff and the hospitals, and even we compare China, Italy and UK, so our resources, I mean the physical resources, are not comparable to them. So that we have to accept. So what I'm not telling we are overreacting.
I don't mean do we have as many beds as China? Obviously not. But do we have enough beds looking at our own, when you look at the scales?
Yeah, so the things like that. So the current situation that our health system is unique. So we have, even though we have adopted, we practice the Western medicine model here, the attitude of the health staff and the resource management, and if you go to a normal day-to-day routine work in the hospitals, our people are managing in our unique own ways. So that is why, even though we have a resource setting which is comparative to the India or Pakistan or Bangladesh, our health indices are very, very comparative to the other countries. That is a uniqueness of our system. I'm not going to elaborate how it works. So the thing is, now, if we come to a global pandemic like this, so of course now we have something around 580 like ICU beds.
Right, in total.
In total, and in the total, and even these 500 beds are not available to the coronavirus patient. Yeah. There are so many other patients.
So if we look at the IDH, the sort of center of where these patients are ending up, you have a capacity of 100 beds or 100 patients,
Yes.
and you have only five ICU beds.
Yeah.
So right now, if you only take 5%, then we can manage because it's less than 100. Therefore, what plans has the government got to cope with the sudden demand for ICU beds? That's the question.
Yeah. So at the moment, there's a plan. Today morning, there was a discussion, and the plan was laid out. There were 2 ICU beds at Mullaria Hospital. So total together at 7 at that vicinity.
Yeah.
And so the next plan is that the KDU. So KDU has a capacity of 70 ICU beds. So, but the only thing is they can't function it without the staff. Even though they have the ICU beds, they have to have the ventilators, which has to be supplied from the other hospitals and the staff. So the colleges has been working together to staff the proposals, and that has to be implemented by tomorrow, because that when these ICU beds the requirement comes, as you mentioned, that we cannot just all of a sudden, if this ICU bed capacity exceeded, there would have been a chaos. But that plan is in place, that is in the implemented stage. So they will have the capacity, and not only that, the other centers, other hospitals, they have to have identify the ventilators and the need of the ventilators. And the other hand, that the instruction goes on the hospital itself. Now, I myself from the cancer hospital, today we had a meeting within our hospital, decided to cut off all non-essential, which means routine work. Of course, we have to do it very cautious when we're dealing with the cancer work.
Yeah.
But of course, the other issues like, for example, patients being operated for a fibroids or a hysterectomy for some benign reasons. So these things need to be rescheduled. So that itself reserve the capacity of these hospitals. Yeah. That is one idea.
But I understand that Sri Lanka has approximately 10 intensive care specialists, whereas we have, the college has about, say, 300 to 400 anaesthetists who level up.
Yeah.
But we've only got 10 intensive care specialists. Do we have any plans to import any more from outside? And from where?
The intensivist specialty has been started quite recently, maybe about 4 to 5 years time. So that is actually the more subspecialization of one of the anesthetists or a medical specialty. So which, of course, the anesthetists and the physicians, suppose if you take the ICUs in the IDH, being looked after by the physicians. So the physicians and the anesthetists has the ability to look after the ICUs but of course, in an ideal situation, intensivist has to look after an ICU. Of course, these 10 intensivists can be placed in the Colombo and the other 2 major hospitals. So, and that, it doesn't mean that, so of course that I don't think there's a need of any more training staff at the moment. We have enough training staff.
So how long will it take to get the facility at KDU ready?
So the proposal is place and the mobilization has been occurred, and it takes the while of the supply of the instrument and the relocating the biomedical staff. That has to be done at the Director General level. So I hope that it will get implemented by tomorrow, but I'm not giving a time frame, but it has to be done quite quickly to make it prepared to have that if that surge comes.
Dr. Pendese, with regard to the history of such viruses, we've seen a similar virus in 1918 to 1920, which was known as the Spanish flu, infected approximately 500 million people. The death toll stood at a staggering 17 million. Is this pandemic as dangerous as the Spanish flu?
Well, in terms of infectiousness, it is more infectious than the Spanish flu. And it's also, it has mortality higher than normal flu. But we have to bear in mind that in 1918, we were in an era of, when medications were not available, the health system was not that advanced. So biomedically, we are in a much better situation than we were in 1917 or 1918. And so I think so it would not be a right comparison. Yes, it is a viral disease, but there are differences between flu and the coronavirus. It's two different family of viruses. Yes, both are respiratory diseases. But just taking on from the discussion, what is important and what we call in epidemiology is flattening the curve. That is the spike in infections, because this is something which, it has a multiplier effect. One person can infect others, and that's why you talk about surges or spikes that come. That's why containing the disease becomes very important, because we do not have a vaccine that quickly we can give and boost the herd immunity so that number of infections would go down. Here we have to rely on prevention measures, public health measures. So if flattening the curve means if we are able to limit the transmission and the number of cases that come up, we will get in precious time to prepare our health system.
Dr. Pendise, social media, along with certain media hubs, report that the United States government has found an antiviral vaccine for this viral infection. How far is this claim true? Because WHO would be notified if there was such a vaccine. For the benefit of our viewers, how far is this claim true?
So there are around 20 candidate vaccines. Some were already in development, the coronavirus vaccines, so they were fast-tracked. There are some candidate vaccines which are already in advanced stages, like we call the phase 3 of the clinical trials, moving on to phase 4. But even when these vaccines are tested, for them to be available for use in large public health sector, it will take some time, because it's not like the vaccine is tested and immediately is available for use, because we need to monitor its efficacy and especially the safety, because we would not want to implement an intervention later on which boomerangs. But yes, there is a pipeline of vaccines as well as therapeutics. So medications are also under discussion. We hear about, and there's a lot of media and social media posts on hydroxychloroquine or anti-malarial drugs, azithromycin. These are clinical trials which are ongoing. There are more than 120 trials on finding treatment for this disease, which is, and there's an integrated clinical trial platform which is housed by WHO. There are ongoing trials in 10 countries. There's a multicentric trial ongoing, which is called the Solidarity Trial. And very soon, within weeks, we would have some recommendation from WHO on which medicines can be used for this disease.
As we speak right now, WHO has not recommended anti-malaria tablets to fight coronavirus.
No, there is no recommendation, but these are used in other countries. As we said, we are gathering evidence. And once we have enough evidence that this is indeed useful, it is effective, and it is safe, a recommendation would come.
Yes,
in a related question, if I can talk to Dr.
If you can pose it to Dr. Jairam.
That's right, precisely. Doctor, on the same subject, and I want to bring up the issue of social media into the picture, because there's a lot of messages which are shared on social media, like on WhatsApp, recommending certain medication. Now, in fact, there's one message going around talking about ibuprofen, if I pronounce it correctly, and so on. On the same aspect, could you talk about treatment and the truth behind this?
Yeah, actually, the correctly said by Dr. Fense. So it is not actually clinically proven yet. All these evidences are not that proven as a very successful treatment for this combat the corona. So still those are on trial basis. So, but if somebody wants to take chloroquine, they can take it, but the problem is there are side effects of these medicines, like headache, dizziness, maybe very uncomfortable, and maybe something like maybe as a side effect, maybe you will get rashes and those side effects. So because of that, if somebody wants to take this medicine, they have to consult a doctor. Without doctor's advice, just because they are in the social media, it's very dangerous to take medicines, especially like chloroquine and the other drug. So my recommendation is, I can't ask somebody to take that medicine, because without knowing any kind of their clinical settings or
Medical
other
history.
ailments, history, so without talking to them, without asking allergy history, so we can't recommend.
Doctor,
So that
today-
is why WHO is waiting until they get the very good clinical results of clinical trials and recommendations from those things regarding medication for this kind of situation. And we also recommend, we can recommend if the WHO recommend to us only.
And doctor, today we saw a second success story. We had the first patient who was confirmed to have COVID-19. He recovered today and
Yes.
he was discharged. So it's good news amidst all this
Yes.
bad news. So from that, the lessons learned, what could the public take from this story to
Exactly.
encourage
So
themselves?
what I want to explain is, one is the country. So we have several kind of managerial system for this kind of situation. One is resource mobilization. Though we have 580 ICU beds, so we can mobilize those resources for COVID-19 management with time when the cases are rising. So other thing is, though we don't have 10,000 bedded hospitals at the moment for kind of this one like China did, there are plans which we place well ahead of this disease. The disease comes to Sri Lanka, as one of our plan to empty some hospitals to manage corona infected patients. So there are that managerial part as well. Other thing, in Sri Lanka, the viral load in this country we can restrict by doing these quarantine measures. So in China, Wuhan, that may be some source where virus started. So that virus load is not in this country. We get virus from people, infected people. So if we can limit the people who are getting infection and limiting the people who are going into the society with infection and infecting other people, we can minimize the virus load in the country.
Dr. Bandara, you spoke about Wuhan. My question to you now is, Wuhan was the epicenter
Exactly.
of the virus
Yes.
before, but
So-
now this has shifted completely to Europe, and now Italy is known as the epicenter of the virus. What is the reason behind this? So this can shift from country to country.
Well, actually, it's not proven with evidences what is the exact reason. But we see more deaths in Italy. When I search for this, to find out some reason, the most justifiable reason is Italy more died people are very old people. So even China, most of the people died are old people, which is true in this corona clinical scenario. So the coronavirus can't be tolerated by older people and debilitated people like people with cancer and people with chronic diseases. But viral diseases, usually, viral diseases, they don't depend on the medication specially. So we can develop our immune system to reduce virus load in our body. That is how the first patient found in Sri Lanka has been cured by himself.
So he was not placed in the ICU, or he was
to
not
my
subject
knowledge,
to a
yes,
ventilator.
he was not.
Okay.
But we don't discharge people without knowing that there are no active viruses in their system.
Right. So, Dr. Bandar, just to clarify, so this person who was released from hospital today, he is no longer carrier of coronavirus.
No.
Is
That
it safe to say that?
But in his samples, the virus is not. We could not find virus. That is why because he is virus free. The consultant
So he's not a
decided,
carrier anymore.
No. The thing is, still, as a precaution, he has been advised to stay at home with self-quarantine for another couple of weeks
Right.
for better, to betterment of the society.
Right. I just want to quickly pose a question to DIG Priyantha Jayakonde as well. DIG, tomorrow, Colombo, Gampaha and Kaluthara, curfew is going to be lifted at 6 a.m. and for a period of a few hours, the curfew will be reimposed once again at 12.
Yeah.
Let's say there are people at queues even by 12 o'clock in the afternoon. What happens then? If they are lining up to buy essential food items and they are still at the queues, because we know that most of the supermarkets like Cargill's, Laf and even Kiel's all are opening up around 8 o'clock in the morning, and from 8 to 12 you have only 4 hours, and you have plenty of people who would be rushing to these outlets to buy goods. And what happens if they are still at queues even by 12 o'clock in the afternoon?
Yeah, we face for this situation today, because today when they lifted the curfew in certain other areas except these 3 districts and the 5 districts in the northern province, but I am very happy to say that people have understood this situation, and so many places except few places like Beruwala fish market, and people have kept their distance, that means the social distance, and they are on the queue. And there was no such panic situation happen today. We are expecting that to be happen tomorrow also. At the same time, we have to think, we'll have to very much balance, because we can't forget that people have to live and they have to take the things. And I think because of this, especially this, very much I must very much thankful to the media and the electronic media plus the social media. Now people have understood this problem. That is what we need. Our requirement is for an attitude change, because as I mentioned in the early occasion also, we have never faced for this global pandemic situation earlier. But this time the people now, most of the people have realized this. And today, tomorrow, if we because especially not like other areas, the western province, especially these 3 districts are very much important, and we are very much concerned about these places. And at the meantime, I have seen so many places, the local government and the cooperative societies have arranged that door-to-door serving system for the dry rations, and this also will be very much helpful. And we are urging the people, especially the traders and the community, to get involved with this with a very responsible manner, because as I said, it is not a security situation. Those days, even when you put a curfew, when you impose the curfew, people used to run, police used to chase them, but this time is not, because if you can't keep this particular social distance, if you can't prevent these unethical gatherings, and it is nothing to bargain, because it's a matter between the life and death. People have to realize this, and we are expecting and we are urging the citizens as well as the traders, the shopkeepers and the supermarket managers, everyone have to get together and to solve this problem. We are expecting that. We don't want police to go and impose and police to go and get involved with the people and to make unnecessary
So
situations.
how must these people go to shop now? Today we saw a situation in Naramala where a police officer was chasing away all those who are not wearing masks. So starting tomorrow, when individuals go to the shop, must they be clad with a mask? Are they supposed to wear gloves? What are the precaution measures that should be taken? And
these precautions measures had been informed continuously by the medical staff, paramedics, and everyone. It has been now it has been sent to as messages to the society. People have to realize this. That is what I told you earlier. This is nothing to bargain. And we'll have to wear, when you are wearing a mask, it is preventing, if I am a carrier, it prevents the minimizing the carrying the system of germs. And like that, then we'll have to think, and with the attitude change should be there first. And we can see what happened to these other countries, especially the Italy, because Italy, according to this medical details, they had a very rich medical scheme. And today really what happened, but we don't want that to happen to our motherland. Government is doing their best, security forces are doing their best, especially the medical staff and the doctors, nurses, everyone is trying their level best to prevent this situation, and I am strongly believing the citizens will definitely help with us to eradicate this.
Dr. Jayakodi, I'm posing this question to you. Why? Because when we go to the epidemiology unit, Ministry of Health website, it says වර්තමාන තත්ත්වය අනුව සාමාන්‍ය ජනතාව දෛනිකව මුහුණ ආවරණ පැළඳීමේ අවශ්‍යතාවයක් නැත. So basically what the English translation of it is, an individual who is following a daily routine will not have to wear face masks. So I'm just following this website because most of the people log on. Yes, of course.
I think Dr. Kannangara is the most suitable person to answer for
this question. Because of this is the epidemic spread has 4 stages.
Yes.
So this is it has now, we are at the cluster stage. It hasn't come to the community spread stage. Yes. So when only it comes to community spread stage, it is advisable to wear a face mask as a preventive measure. WHO recommends that, Ministry of Health recommends that. So still, as we still at the cluster stage of the epidemic, it is not mandatory to wear a face mask to go to outside unless you are having symptoms of upper respiratory tract infection. Like if you're having a coughing or sneezing or something like that, of course to prevent that droplet spread, you can wear it. But if you are wearing the mask, fearing somebody else spread it to you, that will have no protection. So that is what I think the WHO agrees with me. So that is why the epidemiology unit.
Dr. Kannangara, let's say someone coughs, randomly coughs 2 or 3 times, randomly sneezes 2 or 3 times. I work in a tea factory, so I sneeze quite often because of the dust in the tea room. So am I prone to the disease now, or how would I know that I am a clear case and I am not carrying the coronavirus?
Yeah, so the chances of you being a carrier case at the community, if you are not a quarantined or susceptible or under observation, is very minimal. If you are, at the moment there are 18,000 people under observation in the quarantine camps and home. So those people, of course, if they go outside or something like that, they have to wear a mask. But they are under observation. They've been asked not to go out anyway.
I spoke to my consultant physician, Dr. Aruna Kulatunga, just a couple of minutes ago before we started the show. And he said that some people may not even show the symptoms. Am I right,
yes,
Dr. Kannangara?
Yeah.
So, but they could be a carrier.
Yeah.
That can happen. That can happen, of course. But that is not common, and that is not fair for everyone. So we can't take that as a common issue with other people also. So that is the simple answer for that one.
So an individual who may not have a cough, cold or fever or a runny nose or even sneezing for that matter may also be infected with the coronavirus? Yes, Dr. Bendese.
So I think so. What is important, and that is one difference between flu and coronavirus that we left that conversation. Asymptomatic cases are not currently, what the evidence we have, are not drivers of the transmission. They do not drive transmission. While in flu, you have many asymptomatic cases that drive transmission. Now we have to wait for further analysis to be done, but whatever data we have from the databases in countries with large numbers, asymptomatic cases are not the drivers of transmission for COVID-19. Most of these are actually pre-symptomatic cases. So they start, when they start, maybe the contact happened, They didn't have symptoms, but later on they do develop symptoms. So they are not true asymptomatics. I would just touch upon the mask, and thank you, Doctor, very much, because we have a huge global shortage of personal protective equipment, including surgical masks that we see people wearing, which is not recommended in the cluster transmission, as was clarified. Our health workers need protection. They are in the front line treating patients. These masks, please reserve it for health workers. Because imagine a health provider not having the personal protective equipment and faced with a moral dilemma to not expose oneself or to treat a patient or not to treat a patient.
So, Dr. Penisa,
it's important, just let me finish this. As was said, you wear a mask when you have symptoms. If you have symptoms, you stay home, you do not go out to the supermarkets to shop. If you are caring for a person who is sick, you need a mask. But common people without symptom, without any disease in the community, at the stage of the epidemic, Sri Lanka is where we only have clusters, we do not need face masks. When we move into, and that's why we want to contain it, we do not want to move into a community transmission, where then this would be needed. The other would be if there is further evidence comes to say it's an airborne infection. Currently, it is not airborne. There is no evidence to say it is airborne. It's droplet. We do not need masks. You do not need masks if you are healthy and if you are moving around in a community.
If you know, if you are suspecting somebody is spreading this one without symptoms, that means a person who has contact history. If somebody has the disease, if I was with that person for some time, if I am suspecting, associated with that person, if I am suspecting that I will get the disease, I have to be a self-quarantine and stay for 14 days. If I develop symptoms, I have to be tested, or else it's not recommended for testing.
Very quickly, before I open the floor for Faraz, I just have a question for Dr. Kannangara. Dr. Kannangara, we see now at many institutes, you use the infrared temperature check. But based on what we know already, based on what the experts have already told us, the first initial symptoms of this is a sore throat, and then a cough, and then you may get fever. So checking temperature at doorsteps, at institutes, or even at home, or banks or anywhere else, does this work?
Yeah, so if you come like this, now suppose that even that we don't recommend face masks also, that at this stage of the epidemic, but even that we see the people where they have the made up mask, homemade mask, they go and wear aside. We should not discourage them doing it. So that is exactly the because of that what we should discourage is to make the shortage of the mask by wearing by the general public to the health staff. But if they're having their mask prepared at home, prepared at the things, and that gives a social impression that we are also in a situation that we need to protect ourselves and we need to keep the distance, that kind of a thing. And even though that the taking the temperature, it may not help in the contain or triage process or anything else, rather than if we suppose a patient come to a hospital, we triage not by the temperature, we triage by the symptoms, contact history, and that kind of thing. But even if you go to a bank or a hospital, or they check the temperature, that which indicates there is a social concern of this. That message is important. Even people wearing a homemade mask, go outside with mask inside. Some people I have seen driving cars with. So even if they don't exhaust our resources, that's quite all right.
Exactly, yes.
I'm posing this question to you, Dr. Kannangara, mainly because we as a newsroom, we operate 24 hours a day. And I believe most of the other newsrooms may also be working of this sort. And today when I visited the Newsfirst center, they checked my temperature, and I was thinking to myself, is this the way to go about? What is the advice you have for institutes, essential services that are working around the clock to detect such individuals, if that case be? Is temperature checking alone is good enough, or are they supposed to work in shifts? Because the newsroom right now at Newsfirst, they work in shifts. The number of staff who are working in the Newsfirst Center in Colombo has been reduced to 20 to 25, whereas they have approximately around 75 to 100 people working on a day-to-day basis. And still they are giving out the information first and fast. So what must organizations of this sort do? Probably banks. Yes, one of you, if you can respond, yes.
Okay, if you have to use the face mask, please use it appropriately. If you touch the face mask, you're actually getting the virus on your fingers. The most important thing, and even for all staff elsewhere, is to have soap and water for washing hands, because soap will dissolve the virus and wash it away, or use an alcohol-based rub. Hand hygiene is very important. You talked about coughing and sneezing. We need to cover our cough and sneeze, either in the crook of the elbow, or if you are using a tissue, immediately discard the tissue in a closed bin. Have hand hygiene. It's very, very important. That will protect us from infection. Coming to preparing the workplace in the age of COVID-19, where you have less and less people coming because of these closures, every organization needs to prepare itself for the COVID-19. So if you have less staff, you also need to see how are you going to stagger the work. Are you going to allow them to come in shifts, because you cannot have some people working for prolonged hours of time. The other thing is how to make the workplace safe for people who are working prolonged, at extended hours if they are there, so that they have all the mechanisms to take care of themselves in terms of either hand hygiene or because there's also a lot of psychosocial and mental stress. Because there's a disease, you're there, so the right information to these people, having the counseling services that are needed. And if the industry can afford having teleworking, more and more companies are moving towards teleworking, so that you do not have crowding into the, you cannot stop a newsroom. People need to have the news. So you can't say we'll lock down and we won't do, but then how do we organize ourselves so that we do our work, but at the same time protect our health workers and our protect our workers, I keep on talking about health workers, and our establishment safe from COVID-19.
Faraz.
Thank you. When we look at the statistics from this morning, from approximately 7 o'clock this morning till about 9 o'clock this evening, I noticed that globally there have been 11,519 new cases, 650 new deceased cases, and the good news is that there have been 1,952 recoveries. Along with this is this greater understanding amongst the people in Sri Lanka as to the effect of this virus. And therefore, I'm wondering, what about the people, the healthcare workers who are working in these ICUs and so on? Quite often they come from out of town. They live in accommodation, in private accommodation. Now there have been reports where tourists are not welcome in some hotels and so on. So just as the same way, we have people who are saying to these healthcare workers, look, you can't stay with us because we are frightened. How does the government, I don't know who's going to answer this question, but how is the government going to cope with this? Because right now...
with your permission, if I can pose the question to DIG Jayakodi about tourists and their arrivals and how are you supposed to treat? I think DIG Jayakodi could answer that question.
Most of the tourists were informed not to travel from the places where they stay. And it is very much restricted to travel, to transport tourists from one place to one place, because this has been prevented so many problems. And the tourists were asked to stay at the places where they stay the hotels or motel or wherever it is.
Yeah.
And certain instance, we have noticed that some stories has gone out and they were warned to be restricted to their places where they stay.
But that's fine for the tourists. What about, maybe Dr. Bandara can answer that question. What about the healthcare workers?
Yeah, of course, that was
right now it's only 5. If it's 5%, it's less than 5 people in ICU care. But if we go the route of the Italians, where it's between 16 and 20%, that's far more. And so, how are you going to cope with the healthcare workers who are there? I'm having reports
Farah, the government has allowed us to work according to our own schedules, not as routinely what we did. Even at MRI, we are working on a schedule. We don't impose everyone to come daily, even though the health sector is the compulsory. We have advised to work compulsory.
But you all have plans for accommodation to accommodate these people who may be refused accommodation from where they're staying now?
Of course, yes. For my institution actually, we have planned for those things as well. So wherever the infected people are there, so for those institutes, especially health ministry has nominated 24 institutes. So in those institutes, related to, maybe close by nursing schools, maybe some other common places where our training centers are there, and those places have been prepared for these accommodation facilities. At the same time, government has allowed us to have our own schedule to divide our workforce into periods and let them work for some days, and then we can allow them to stay at home safely. So those things are there, but it's very important, because if one of the member from my laboratory got infected because they are dealing with this infection, we have to close down the laboratory. But it will not be there, that will not happen, because we have backup plans. We have other staff who are safe at home. Whenever we need, we can ask them to come to work. So those plans are there in place to prevent that kind of.
A related question, Faraz. One of our ardent viewers have posed this question to Dr. Bandara. Dr. Bandara, when health workers go off duty, do they go back to their homes with the problem of carrying the virus to their families, or are they quarantined within the premises in dedicated quarters?
Well, there are institutes, yes, people who are working at ICUs and infectious people, there are arrangements for those things. For people who are working in not the enclosed places, the open places with formal work, they can do this self-cleaning things and the washing hands and all those the formal kind of measures to reduce infection or clean themselves, and they can go safely to their home. Actually, I'm working in a place where the infectious materials are coming 100 packs per day, but I have not wear face mask yet until now. So I know that the measures that I have to take is clean my hand very well with soap and water and alcohol, some alcohol rubs, and I have to stop touching my face and all those measures, and I have to avoid gathering among my colleagues, and all those measures I'm taking. So I know that I have not got infection yet. So people has to follow these things in day-to-day routines, and even on tomorrow after lifting up this curfew, people themselves has to follow these instructions which are given by the government.
So thank you very much, gentlemen, for your thoughts so far. We go in for a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we discuss more about the virus and what is plaguing Sri Lanka at present and what steps you should take. I will also try to show you how to use a hand sanitizer when you go out tomorrow to buy some goods, make sure that you use a hand sanitizer which has over 65% of alcohol percentage. I'll show you how to use a hand sanitizer when we come back. Stay connected, stay with Face the Nation. We will be right back.
This is Newsline Live. Watch us for all the action. We ask all the questions that you want answers to.
Good evening. Welcome to Brainbusters with Slip Season 2.
27 schools across the island, 27 selected students, testing their brains to win the ultimate championship, the Brainbusters with Slit Season 2.
Brainbusters with Slit, Saturday at 6:30 p.m.
पसंदीवा के मार से नादत कंगन या मिलंकुई मेघ वर्षा गला हेलुने से दयानावे दोरे अन में गुंकंगा उहे सेलुना
රොබයි සතිය දින පහේම හවස 5ට.
මෙච්චර කල් ඔබල මට කිව්වේ නෑ. යමු.
මායිමෙන් අපි ගැනත් පොඩ්ඩක් කියන්නකෝ. එතකොටනේ රටම අපි ගැන දැනගන්නේ.
මායිම හැමදාම හැමදේම දිනපතා රාත්‍රී 8:30ට.
This is Newsline Live. Watch us for all the action. We ask all the questions that you want answers to.
Welcome back. This is Face the Nation. I have some notes to summarize as the show goes on. I will speak about what each speaker said earlier in the evening as to what must you do and the steps that will be taken. But before that, I want to give an opportunity for us to pose some questions from our panelists.
Thank you, Shamir. Maybe this question is better for you, Dr. Bandara. Or Dr. Kanangara too can chip in. I'm concerned that whilst the global numbers are going up, and as I just said, just today, over the last 10 to 12 hours, it's gone up by about 11,519. And it's probably gone up again whilst this show's been on. Therefore, I'm concerned that when we have a facility like KDU, which Dr. Kanangara says 70, my information was 60 beds, but with a potential to have maybe up to 150 people. And it is obviously one of the Sri Lanka's easily the best state-of-the-art facility is at KDU. It has many plus points, including the air changes in the rooms, and each, it's not a hall, it's each bed is a room. And so there, the ICU is per room, per patient. And it has enormous capacity, including accommodation and so on. So I'm puzzled as to why we're going this other step, waiting for IDH to fill up, then maybe the next and the next. Because we're just talking about 3 beds in one place and a few more in another place. So we may well be caught out. So I'm puzzled as to why we're taking this laid-back attitude.
Yeah, Sri Lanka started to face this problem well ahead the first patient found. So when we found the first patient on 27th of January, so we have had several meetings to plan how we are going to face this COVID-19 infection. Even at that time, it was named as novel corona-19. So in our plans, so the main center to control and admit and treat infectious disease people is, the dedicated place is IDH hospital, where that is where we wanted to start with. And in our plan, of course, this is the 4th step of our ministry plan we are now currently working on. So that is where, when the other facilities are limited, so we can move on to this. It's already done by maybe, like doctor said, by tomorrow evening, all the necessary staff and other facilities, all the things will be mobilized to KDU hospital. Now, so that because of that plan, that happens.
There's another one I want to say to you, and it's either to Dr. Kanangara or to you, Dr. Bandara. At the beginning, we saw that people with suspected, the quarantine, people needing quarantine measures were shipped off to Batticaloa. Now, obviously, Batticaloa is as far as you can get from any kind of specialist anything, and it's right there. I was wondering why, or if indeed you all had considered a place like Hambantota. They've got an airport, which is hardly used. They've got a seaport, which is, again, hardly used. It's got great roads. And within hours from Hambantota, you can be anywhere. 2 hours to Colombo, all that. So, and it's got empty buildings. So was it ever considered or not? Or was there a political dimension?
So the decisions, now, first of all, I just tell that there's a slight difference between quarantine, and there was a little bit of mix up, not in this panel actually, in the society, that's what I'm telling this. This is quarantine versus isolation. So that people thinking that quarantine, it's like something like isolation. That is completely different concept. So the quarantine, you quarantine healthy people. They just have a contact history only. They don't have symptoms. So these are very healthy people.
Yeah.
That is the concept of quarantine.
Yeah.
So
my question still stands. I don't see your explanation
So
answering that.
People, actually it was initially planned at the Handala, the previous leprosy hospital. It was there's plan for a quarantine, but there was a social dilemma come in that government has to change the plan. And so it has been the quarantine process been handed over to the army. So that they decided their most comfortable place to quarantine. It may be at any place of the country, that doesn't matter, because it doesn't need any health facilities, anything to be the things. Only thing, if they are suspected, we have quite nice hospital chains, physicians placed everywhere in the country.
Yeah.
So the Kandakad would have been the most comfortable place for the army. So we have to respect their decisions. So that has been happened. I don't think there's any political dilemma or anything on behind that. Suppose I was asked to do something, so I would rather choose the place which I'm more convenient with. I would give the maximum service to the people. That's what they decide. That's how they decide. So that is I think that is the reason that we have been decided.
Other thing, doctor, we have to understand that within short period, more than 2,000 people came to Sri Lanka from Italy and South Korea.
10th of March.
So, 10th of March. So we had to, provide that services within very short time. So
but at the moment,
another thing, quarantine
from the 1st to the 9th of March, the number of people who have arrived from overseas stands at 15,000, Dr. Bandara.
Yeah, the thing is, so the concept of quarantine is wherever the people who will stay kind of home, away from home. So in that place there should not, there no need to have specialist doctors or any other facilities. Only food, lodging, and
I'll give you one more question and then I need
supportive.
I'm still puzzled because if you land at Katonaika and you want to go to Batiklo, it takes forever and a day. It's several hours long by road, right? All the way onto the other side. Yet, if it was in Hambantota, perhaps maximum 2 hours, let's say 3 hours now. Therefore, my dilemma is still the same. And my question, therefore, still stands.
Yeah, your idea is Hambantota, not the hospital, maybe...
No, not the hospital. There are several. There is a convention center. There's all sorts of buildings that are empty. And there are great roads. That's my point. All roads lead to Hambantota. We've got an airport, we've got a port, which is, then you can have people come in there, they can land at Mattala, they can be taken to a convention center, and so on.
Yeah, that is one possibility, Ms. Farah. The problem is, so quarantine is not infectious patients are going to somewhere else. Yeah. So these are normal people. Actually,
that's what I'm saying. They're normal people.
So large number of people with that short period. In that discussion, I was there. Yeah. So within shorter period for that kind of large
I don't know how old you are, but in 1983, during the riots, Ratmanana Airport, just a few yards away from here, was used as a camp for the refugees. So, I'm wondering to myself, why travel all the way to the other side of our country?
Some reasons we doesn't know, because we don't know, because sometimes maybe the airport and aviation, maybe the foreign airlines may not have been selected that airport, or something may have been there.
We can discuss about
that. Is something which we don't know, but that is justifiable within short period. For massive crowd, the most suitable place which has been in place to accommodate those people and who are not ill people. So at that time, that was a good decision where we also agreed as health people.
I think first we can discuss about the decisions that are taken by the government later on in a different panel. But right now, the need of the hour is to keep our viewers up to date on what steps they should take tomorrow.
Well, yes, exactly, Shamir. But also very important to know, the people ought to know whether this government and its facilities are ready and able to handle the surges that Dr. Pensay was talking about.
Absolutely.
Because if that happens and we are not ready at the maximum when we do the calculations, and if we use the Italian average of between 16 and 20%, we can only cope with 2,000 COVID-19 patients. And if because at the most we'll have 200 beds,
right.
including KDU.
Yeah, but I want to let Shehan pose a question, and during the final round, you can sum up the points that you've mentioned, because we're running out of time as well. Dr. Kannangara.
My question is to Dr. Pensay. It's a question from one of our viewers. When fighting public health crises like COVID-19, is it important that the government releases all information about strategies deployed and statistics to the public? Is there maybe some international best practice about openness?
Information is power, and getting the right information at the right time actually empowers people to make the right choices, to make the right decisions. And one of the examples in the COVID-19 which immediately comes to mind is Singapore, because that was leadership right from the top and all information was available. And even back home in Sri Lanka, I have to say that we have all the information. The epidemiology unit comes up with the numbers. And of late, they have also released the epi map in terms of saying that what the connections are with the different cases that have been identified so far. We have had the top leadership address people, because it's important for people to feel comforted and to feel confident that they are taken care of. So information, hiding information doesn't help. Giving the right information in the right format at the right time empowers people. And in this age of social media, where misinformation and rumors travel faster than the virus, timely information and the right information is very, very critical, because that will help us fight the epidemic.
Right. Thank you very much, Faraz and Shehan, for posing questions to our panelists. We're moving to the final round of the show now. I want to start off with DIG Priyantha Jayakudi. DIG, tomorrow is going to be one of the busiest days as far as the police is concerned, but I want to pose a different question to you. This is not an ordinary curfew that has been imposed. During the security, during the 2009, at the end of the war, we have seen curfew being imposed. And every 2 kilometers or 1 kilometer, you'll find a checkpoint. But during this time, we don't see barricades of that sort anymore. What must the public do? What is their responsibility at present?
Shamil, that's why at the very first beginning I informed to this panel, this is a pandemic situation. Rather than from this security point of view, we'll have to think about the consequences. And especially I want to mention that ending at today morning 6 o'clock, we have police have arrested 1,794 curfew violators. These are real loiters, not the people who are going for the hospitals, people who are going for marketing, or they are particular. Because when a person is on the road, the police used to question him and advise him. And these are the real loiters. And 1,794 people have been arrested, ending at morning 6 o'clock. And especially police urge people, citizens of this country, to associate with us, to cooperate with the medical staff, to listen the medical advice. And even tomorrow will be, as you said, it's a very crucial day. And it is, people have to decide whether they go and get losing the social contacts and get the pandemic to their homes, or to save their lives and others. Especially people have to think this. And as you said, we have not placed security barriers, we have not placed security checks, but we are continuously monitoring the situation. And security forces, with the advice of the medical staff, and we are going to minimize this social movement, social gatherings, because this is the best way to avoid this pandemic, to control this pandemic situation.
Thank you very much.
That is what we need, and we are urging people to always cooperate with us and feel that this could be prevented from our motherland.
Thank you very much, DIG Priyantha Jayakudi. We now move attention to Dr. Raisa Pense, WHO representative in Sri Lanka. Doctor, what is your message right now for the Sri Lankan government? You have the GMOA sitting on to your right. You have the authorities governing our country seated onto your left, and onto your far left you have another doctor who represents one of the highest bodies to conduct tests and examinations. What do you have to say to tell the people and the government at large at this point of time?
I would just like to say that yes, we are in a pandemic, but this is a pandemic that we can contain and we can reverse. we need a all of government and all of society approach, because it's not just the health sector alone that will be able to manage and reverse this epidemic. It's important that people are part of the response, that taking personal protection measures and ensuring the social distancing, which is important to contain the spread. So simple things, don't crowd places, maintain safe distance, very simple, 1 to 2 meters away. If you are spreading your hands and if you're touching each other, you are in a crowded space. And it's also important that in the health sector, as we are, within the health sector, we do not have a vaccine, we do not have treatment, but it's important that we identify, we test, and if we diagnose a case, that we manage, we isolate, we manage, we do the contact tracing, and we do quarantining. By taking all these measures, along with the social distancing, the personal protection, and other public health interventions, we will be able to turn the tide on this epidemic. In Sri Lanka, we are currently at a stage where we can very easily contain the disease. We need to bring all of society, all of the government together so that we not only flatten the curve, but we bring the curve down, and very soon we will be able to defeat COVID-19.
Thank you very much, Dr. Raisa. We now move our attention to Dr. Jairwan Bandara, Director of the Sri Lanka Medical Research Institute. Dr. Bandara, what must the public do right now in a situation like this? Must they be alarmed with the situation? Must they continue to stay at home and make sure to listen to the health authorities and also the police and the security forces in a time like this? What must they do?
Yeah, we have to. The people have to understand this. The number of the infectious material, that is the load of virus load, is very minimum at the moment in the society, that is community, because because of the enforcement of these laws and the health advisors and health education and empowerment of people, all those measures has affected this one very positively. So people has to obey the commands or whatever it is being told by the other people. So they have to follow the things, the advices that has been in place in many media. So this, of course, this disease control has to taken up by people, because they have to follow instructions and they have to safeguard themselves, because no one can safeguard a person himself. So people has to listen to the health advisors and other things in the media, and people has to respect all those measures. And this is, of course, the more responsibility has to be there in place with themselves, and control the disease by spreading. So community viral load has to be controlled by maybe allowing people to be safe with all the rules and regulations.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jairwan Bandara, Director of the Sri Lanka Medical Research Institute. We now finally want to listen to Dr. Saratha Kannagara, Vice President of the Government Medical Officers Association. Dr. Kannagara, most often than not, fingers are pointed at the GMOA for being a political organization, but we are not talking about politics today. It's all about informing the public as to what they should do, putting everything aside in terms of the betterment of the country. In your opinion, what must the government do now? Because when you started off the statement today, you said we now have a health minister who listens, so that was somewhat a political statement to be made by you. So I want to pose the question differently now to you. What must the government really do at present in terms of this disease, and what steps must the president take now? Because the president is not a doctor. Those who are surrounded as far as the government is concerned or the cabinet is concerned, you don't find any doctors either. So what must the government do?
Yeah. So, and let me start with so the Singapore experts at the telling that the content of this COVID-19 infection has 3 pillars. So one thing is the medical capacity, the government responsibility, and the social capital. So these 3 pillars has to work together, and that will prevent. That is how Singapore contained this infection. So, and the medical capacity, I think we have discussed in detail. So, and what you're asking about the government and the social capital. So let me start first of all with the government and the social capital, how that 2 things work together. So tomorrow that the government has to give the clear messages to the public, make, in that case, if it is needed, make the circulars. So let me, for example, that the suggestions we have made, I'll explain. So tomorrow that the people of the country need to understand this curfew is not to make you constrained. This is just to prevent the spread of the disease. So then lifting of the curfew is not to go outside, not to work, but to just to supply you essential items and give you essential services to others. So that's why. So now, suppose tomorrow, if you have plenty of food in your house, you don't have to go out. You can stay home. But if you're going out, don't send your diabetes father to your shop. So you have to go, right? So, and then if that's what we wanted from the government side, that if the government can provide a list of like packs in the supermarkets for some pricing with essential items, people don't go and have to choose itself. They can go and buy that pack quickly within few minutes, come back. So that kind of initiative if the shop owners could do that, if the supermarkets, from the government, we need to give the directives to the supermarket chains. So that this has to be done. These are you can make 1,000 packs, 2,000 packs, which needed to country to survive with the dry rations, little bit of vegetables, that kind of a thing, toothpaste, that kind of a thing. So have the packs ready, and then people doesn't need to be hanging around the supermarket choosing the items.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Saratha Nagara, Vice President of the GMOA. Thank you very much, Dr. Raisa Pense, WHO representative in Sri Lanka. Thank you very much, DIG Priyantha Jayakodi, as well as Dr. Jadwan Bandara, Director of the Sri Lanka Medical Research Institute. A big salute goes out to all 4 of you for coming here on the show tonight and informing the public as to what steps they should take in the next few days. But remember, the situation improves or aggravates. If it does aggravate, we will, as a media network, keep you up to date on all the developments that will take place and what steps you should take at home to follow as far as this menace or this crisis is concerned. Thank you very much, Shehan, for joining us tonight on the show. Very quickly for us, tell us who is your guest tomorrow morning. I presume you will be on the show tonight. Show tomorrow morning.
Absolutely. Wouldn't miss it for anything, Shamir. Permit me just a few seconds.
Yes, of course.
In this world of complex cities, simple things become realities. Simple things like cleaning your hands properly, which you'll probably show us how to do, and simple things like being recognized for your efforts and so on. And Newsfirst is particularly very proud at the moment. Apart from doing all this essential work that we're doing, we're very proud that a member of our team, namely you, has recently been promoted, and that recognition is a simple thing. So on that note, I'll tell you who my guest is tomorrow, and it's Dr. Anuruddha Pardenian.
Right, thank you very much for us, and thank you very much for the wishes as well. Very quickly, I thought before I finish tonight's show, summarize a few points as far as the discussion was concerned. No vaccine has been found yet, and we are still, as far as the world is concerned, we are still in a development stage. The WHO has not recommended any medication, so do not go to the pharmacies and request for medications as seen in social media. You may have side effects, so it's always better to consult a physician beforehand, before taking any medication. Also, there is a flu that is going on in the country as well, so this may not particularly be coronavirus or even COVID-19. So hence, if you are feeling ill at home, first of all, get yourself quarantined, meet a physician, get his involvement, get his information, get his guidance. And remember, you can go to any private hospitals that are registered by the government and get yourself admitted, and then you can seek the assistance of the Sri Lanka Medical Research Institute through the hospital that you're admitted to do the tests required if you are infected. The Medical Research Institute takes only up to 6 to 7 hours, maximum around 8 hours to release the results, so do not fear. You can go to the private hospitals and get those medication. And as the DIG pointed out, if you do violate any quarantine procedures in Sri Lanka, you are in for a 6-month rigorous imprisonment. Correct me if I'm wrong, DIG. And also remember, this is not an airborne disease as seen in social media. It's only been transmitted by droplets, as Dr. Vaisa and even Dr. Sarada as well as Dr. Bandara pointed out. Hence, it's very important for you to stay at home. I'll quickly show you how to use a hand sanitizer. Make sure that the hand sanitizer you're using is over 60%, has an alcohol percentage. And right now you see many hand sanitizers that are in the market, but make sure that you go for a hand sanitizer that has over 60% of the alcohol percentage. You can use hand sanitizers like Safeguard that is already in the market. So what you do is, you just have some in your hand when you're rubbing your hands. Make sure that you first of all cover your palms, and then behind your hand, and then behind both hands, and then remember you use the hand sanitizers to rub your fingers as well as your nails, and then make sure that it goes right beneath the wrist area as well. So you need to cover that area as well, and then while it automatically evaporates from your hand, you are covered. But this is not, remember, an alternative of washing your hands. If you do have a place to wash your hands, that's key. Your hands should be washed for at least 20 seconds. So tomorrow when you go out, remember to follow all these instructions very closely. Again, do not be deceived by the hand sanitizers that are being issued by these small companies that are coming out. Always go with a reputed company which has a hand sanitizer percentage, alcohol percentage of over 60% as recommended by the World Health Organization. When you are on your own, we are always with you. We've always been there with you right throughout, whenever there has been an issue, a crisis. So we will continue to be with you. Make sure that you get your information from reliable sources. It's important that at a time of this nature, you should not be misinformed through social media. Social media is key. However, remember, you have to make sure that you verify this information before you transmit it to someone else. I leave you tonight with a quote, as I always do. Being scared is part of being alive. Accept it. And as a nation, let's walk through this menace. Let's walk through this crisis, and we will always come on top. Stay at home, stop the spread, and let's all stay alive. Take care and good night.